All right, so today I am walking with Louis Alvarez and Andy Kolker.
Right now he's walking with me, but he won't be in just a minute because I'm going to have to sit this one out. But you guys are in for a treat. Ben Steinbauer, Louis Alvarez, Andy Kolker.
The University of Texas, the Henry Ransom Center, the Harry, what am I saying? Harry Ransom Center. We have some great guests today, and I'm really looking forward to it. So, Keith, you will be missed.
I am missed already. I miss myself in this one.
These are big shoes to fill. You know, doing these solo, I don't think they're as good without you. So,
well, I appreciate that. Enjoy this walk with Louis and Andy. These guys have been around quite a few blocks.
Yes, a long time.
You may know them. They were mentioned in Paul Steckler's episode. Dr. Paul Steckler is a longtime collaborator with them, but they also have a whole career outside of their political work with Paul.
That's right, and they make funny documentaries, which I'm very excited to talk to them about.
Bread and butter right there.
That's my jam. So
butter and jam. It sounds like a delightful breakfast with Ben, Louis, and Andy. Enjoy.
On Dog Walks.
On your left.
You're listening to Doc Walks with Ben and Keith.
So here we are on a bright, crisp for Austin November morning.
It sure is.
And I am here with Louis Alvarez and Andy Kolker. And we actually met when I was in grad school. Yeah, Paul Steckler's class, 2004. So I'm sure you remember it.
I remember everything. Actually, only from 2004 on.
Okay. Oh, good. Well, I've been in luck. And we were walking around the UT campus here this morning. And tell me what you guys are doing here in Austin.
Well, we have been working on a kind of a long-term project that involves sort of reinterpreting some of our old politics films that we've been shooting for 30 years, trying to reinterpreting it for the present day. And we broke out one of the stories, which was about a state senator from Houston named Rodney Ellis. We filmed him in 1995 in the Ledge. And then we caught up with him a couple years ago. He's now in Houston. And so we made a little movie about kind of what it means to be an inside man. If you're progressive and you want to really kind of have an effect on politics, it'll really help to have somebody who's kind of inside the government, you know, pulling the levers, doing God's work that way.
Yeah. The thing about Rodney is that he's kind of one of these guys. He's sort of larger than life sort of character.
Right.
And he knows how to pull the levers, and he knows sort of the optics of what he's doing. And so he's able to sort of really just sort of, he'll ingratiate himself if he needs to, or he'll be a bastard if he needs to, but he'll do all the things that he needs to do to kind of get the panic, you know, to fight the good fight, essentially.
Right.
And so for us, instead of waiting to finish the film, because we're always looking for money, like every documentary person, we broke out his particular story into a short. And the short was shown at a film festival in Round Top, and it was a lot of fun.
Here, let's cross real quick here. We're on campus here at UT. This is a first for Doc Walks, taking our lives in our hands here, crossing in front of the bus. So Paul shared the short with me, and I realized that I did a terrible job of introducing you guys, because the way that we are connected is through Dr. Paul Steckler.
Indeed.
Who was my graduate thesis advisor. And has been a longtime collaborator of you guys, or with you guys. But previous to Paul, you guys have you've been a filmmaking documentary team for nearly 50 years now, correct?
What's funny for us is we come to Texas and we're like, oh, you're the guys who work with Paul Steckler. Right. And everyone else in the country is like, oh, Paul, you're the guys who work with Louis and Andy. You're the guy who works with Louis and Andy.
Well, so I want to set the record straight. I'm going to tell Paul from now on that he's the guy who works with Louis and Andy.
Well, there's only one of him and there's two of us, so, you know.
Yeah, this is the 50th year of us partnering in professional life.
And you guys live in New York.
We both live in New York in different boroughs. It's not like Tuesday. So you guys like hang out together? It's like, no, actually part of the success of our relationship is that while we're very, very good friends, we have separate lives.
Tell me about that, because I own a production company with my best friend from graduate school, and we're going on our 20th year. And so I wonder if you would tell me, like,
you think there's any secrets? Yeah. Well, I think Louis just mentioned it, actually. part of it is that we do have, we have a lot of friends in common, but at the same time, we do a lot. We have separate lives. We in fact have separate wives, actually.
Step one.
Step
marry
one.
different women.
Yeah, that's kind of the way it works. Yeah.
Should we go around the front here? I bet
Yeah,
we get a
sure.
really beautiful look at the tower if we
Yeah.
go this way.
Also,
As
what's
a matter of
interesting
fact-
about this particular corner is this building is Bow Hall, which I guess is renovated. I guess it's the architects.
This one straight ahead of us?
No, the one to the right.
Oh, with the beautiful
Yeah.
arch windows.
Yeah,
Oh,
we're gonna
look at
flip a camera around to catch it.
Yeah, I'll get a little bit of
Here
it here.
yesterday, and people were posing in front of it. It was designed by an architect named Cass Gilbert, who people don't remember, but it turns out he was one of the most influential architects of the early 20th century.
Wow.
Did the Woolworth building in New York, did the Supreme Court building in Washington, did 3 state capitals, and we just got a grant to do a little short film about him.
Yeah.
And everywhere we go, oh, Cass Gilbert did a building in this town. Let's go, let's go pull out
Well,
the iPhone and shoot it. You know?
And
But
it's
this is
because of this building? Like you're
No. We just
Coincidentally,
discovered it. We just
he
discovered
did-
this.
We didn't expect. He mostly works in like Minnesota and the Northeast, but he did 2 buildings at UT.
And apparently, this building and the other building this
Yeah.
particular style is very relevant to the rest of this campus. Okay, and the rest of the campus is essentially all over Texas. He must have designed how many hundreds of buildings?
I mean, he just everywhere.
hundreds.
He was an incredibly
Wherever you go.
successful guy, and
Yeah.
but by the time he died in the 30s, his brand of neoclassicism
Yeah.
was
Good
dead.
God,
It was
yeah.
replaced by modernism. So nobody cared about him sort of professionally
Right.
for decades. Now we're discovering that actually he did very beautiful. The interior spaces are gorgeous.
Yeah.
And now that the wars, the modernist wars, are really kind of been fought
over.
already and they're settled, people are appreciating his
Well,
stuff.
partly also because if you look at these buildings, you'll really see that they stand the test of time,
Sure.
right? And now we've come to sort of understand that, well, people are not going to be knocking these buildings down.
Right.
First of all, it would probably take I don't know, a small army to knock them down. I mean, like the Supreme Court building in Washington.
Right.
The Woolworth building in New York was the very first skyscraper in the
It
world.
was the tallest building in the world until they built the Empire State 30 years later.
Yeah,
So-
literally.
Our thing has always been to try to not do the most obvious topic of documentaries.
Yeah.
Okay. For example, we do stuff about politics, and people think you're doing a story about who's going to be president or something.
Right.
No, we do local stories because those are the most interesting, and often the most revelatory.
Right.
Because the stakes are lower. You're trying to get close to a presidential campaign. The last documentary to do that was in 1960,
Right.
when Richard Leacock did it. Now what you do is you go to city council, somebody running for city council or state senator,
Yeah.
and they're often driving themselves around, and they're much more willing to be open. And that's always been our sweet spot. So Cass Gilbert, the architect story, is another one where people don't really know who he is, but then once you explain it, it's like, kind of interesting.
You
I
see
like
him
to say
everywhere.
that. Also, we only have money to make like a 10-minute film,
I see.
which is also liberating because it's
Yeah.
really like a sketchbook. You're not going to sit there and do a Ken Burns style, which is not our approach anyway.
I think this may be the first film we've ever made about a dead person.
Oh, interesting.
Because we just simply don't do that.
So
I mean,
over
for the most
50
part.
years, you guys look for stories that are happening in the present.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, the thing that I love about your work is that it's humorous. for the
Right.
most
Yeah.
part. Like
Right.
you're tackling serious topics. Ooh, let's
Yep.
look at here about it. Look here
Okay.
at the state cap. This is always such a beautiful look at it.
It is featured in several of our documentaries.
Matter of fact.
No, it's beautiful.
No, it
Yeah.
is. It's absolutely true. Yeah.
Yeah, we
definitely
made
true.
the piece we did about the Texas state legislature in 1995. The building was actually the star. I mean, there were all the people in it, but the building, because our
Yeah.
camera guy was really good and he got such beautiful footage, and the building was sort of like
Right.
like the supporting actor.
To your point though about humor, okay, yeah, I mean, we sort of came from the idea that, when we started making documentaries, and I don't mean to sound really old, but there was a sort of a sense that documentaries were kind of an eat your peas sort of thing, right? Like, this is going to be good for you.
It's medicine.
Right. This is going to be good for you. And we sort of were like, well, wait a minute, this is before Michael Moore, by the way. We sort of said, well, why don't, we're kind of funny guys. We need to entertain our audience as well as, and all our movies have messages, they all do.
Right.
Okay, but at the same time, if you're really going to ultimately consume this stuff, okay, you really need to have some levity in there, something to kind of make it, make people want to watch.
A spoonful of sugar helps
Right,
the
and
mess
that's
go
those
down.
spoonful of sugar. That's sort of what was always been sort of our brand to some degree.
So for our audience listening, let's just tick off a couple of like your biggest projects. So starting, was it Native Tongues? Is that
It was called American Tongues.
So sorry,
No,
American
so that was the
Tongues.
first one that sort of had a national release. It was about the way people talk.
Right.
And we had an insane idea where we were going to get in a van and drive around and like go to like swap meets and cowboy rodeos and stuff like that. And at that point, you know, people just knew the main TV, and everybody said, we were all talking like Walter Cronkite, who used to be a guy who did the news, you know, 50 years ago, right? And it's not true. There was a lot of regionalism. And it was really fun, but nobody could really talk about I just talk normal. You have 10 people saying that in completely different accents. There's a truth there about how people think of themselves.
Well, it's also, you know, it ended up being almost a film about social class, because ultimately people were talking about the way they talked, and then they would say like, well, yeah, you know, people, if you have a really heavy Southern accent, I go up north and people make fun of me. And that sort of started us, I think, on a kind of somewhat of a theme in a lot of our work. When we made a film later, a number of years later, about social class in America.
Yeah.
Okay, it's called People Like Us. We went to a lot of different places and talked to a lot of different people about the way they talk, about their class.
Right.
And that was another kind of subject, which, for the most part, Americans, you know, class. We talk about class. What's that?
Well, we're supposed to be a classless
society, and you know, we can talk about race, kinda. Okay, like kinda is fraught, but we kinda know the vocabulary. But with class, no. In fact, it got to a point where we were having trouble doing anything. So we actually went to England for just a while. We figured out, well, we're going to go to a place which, in fact, people talk about class all the time.
Right.
And if you ask people on the street, what class are you? They're going to like tell you about this. They're going to, oh, I'm working class and all those toffs up there on the hill, and blah, blah, blah. I mean, and we were so happy. It was like, oh my God, people actually talk about class here. And we went back to America and it was like, class?
Right.
No, we don't talk.
Well, it's interesting because in the intervening years, because that was 25 years ago, we're much more sensitive to class, especially with the rise of kind of populism and working class switching parties from Democrats to Republican. And even though a lot of it is bullshit, a lot of it is bullshit and like, you know, lip service, there is much more consciousness about that.
Yeah, there absolutely
At
is.
the time in 2000 when we were filming, we were able to just get people to open up in ways that they were very unself-conscious.
So how did two guys from New York come to make political films, humorous films, largely set in Texas or the South?
Well, we actually aren't from New York.
No.
I mean, we're actually
here.
in Louisiana. We met in New Orleans.
That's where you met Paul.
Yeah, subsequently, but we met each other. We were VISTA volunteers, which was then now it's called AmeriCorps, and actually it may not
Domestic
exist.
Peace Corps is really what
It may not exist anymore in the Trump administration, but it was basically using video to do community organizing.
Yeah.
In a time when the video was new technology, like where you could actually go out with what was called a porta pack, a little camera. So we started making films there.
Okay.
And it was really helpful because, first of all, we honed our craft. Nobody else was making films for the most part down there. There were zillions of stories because it was Louisiana, you can just imagine.
Everybody's a character.
Exactly. And also they're obsessed politically. They say it's the fourth meal that Louisianians eat every day. Everybody's aware of the foul title. So we sort of got into politics. Then we met Paul, who, of course, politics is his modus operandi.
Right.
And so we started making films together. And that's how we ended up doing it. But the humor was always the essence of it.
Yeah,
Not taking it too seriously.
Okay.
But taking it very seriously at the same time, which is really a tight walk.
I love that so much about your work because I also work in humorous documentaries, and when you tell people that, they're almost like gobsmacked, like they don't understand. Like documentaries are not supposed to be funny. I don't really understand that reaction because life is very funny. Like,
well, it's sort of like
tragedy, and yes, there's hardship, and of course, but like the way we get through that is with humor, and and anybody who's told a good story at a dinner party
knows.
would know
right,
that,
would
right?
know. Well, you know, it's funny because we always think that, well, we're making movies about the human comedy, and it sort of encompasses a lot of different things.
Right.
You know, and it's funny, so we did get our start in Louisiana, and it's a matter of fact, the movie we made before American Tongues was called Yeah, You Right. which is the way people in New Orleans, when they want to agree with you, they say, hey, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, you're right.
When we encountered New Orleans for the first time, it was kind of like, well, you see the architecture and the food and that kind of stuff that people, stereotypically enjoy, but also the way they talked was really weird. It like didn't make any sense because like working class white people talked like they were from Brooklyn. And it was just like, what's going on here? It was just so weird, right? Yeah. Well, it turns out it's the same people who migrated into New York, also migrated south. So the Italians and the Irish and Jews and all that. And that. So they all kind of mushed together and they created, with a lot of Southernisms, it sounded this kind of very unique way of speaking. That's how we got started.
One of the challenges for us is that the topics that our early films were about were largely ephemeral. They
were non-visual.
They're non-visual. It wasn't like, this is about a guy who's like trying to build a church and we're going to follow him from the beginning to the end. No, it's about the way people talk. Like, how do you film about that? Social class. It's not something that's tangible. And so it's like we set ourselves on incredibly difficult tasks. And one of the
without realizing it, I don't think. I don't know what we were doing exactly.
People look at the movies now. The movies are very funny.
Yes.
And they kind of hit the mark. They do what they need to do, and people go, "Oh, it must have been really fun to make that." It's
actually,
like, you have no idea.
Oh my God!
The entire time, when you're like stuck in the middle of a small town in West Virginia, and people aren't talking to you, because you're outsiders, and like you really just need to get them just saying a couple words.
Well, I'm so glad you hit on that point about it, because I have never been able to raise money very well for my movies or get grant support because if it's funny or if it has a humorous bent or if it's not something very concrete, I find it's very hard to get people to understand.
I think it's frivolous.
I think it's either frivolous or
lightweight or whatever.
It's funny because it used to be that, if you were making a film in Texas about something about Texas, nobody nationally would care, like on PBS or something, because, you're regional. It's not important. That's not important. We want, major issues, national issues, that sort of thing. Well, now, at least, that has changed. Because now if you're making somebody starting off, you always say, like, well, make a movie about something something that you have access to that maybe somebody else does. That's now valuable because that's considered to be somewhat universal. Before that was like, we don't care about you.
Well, I was going to answer your original question because I think that's really key to anybody who's trying to pitch a project, which is that, yes, you are to a certain degree the creature of the people who want to give you money.
Yeah.
And so you do have to tailor your project to each source without like deforming and not lying, I'm going to do this about this and I'm going to tell the other people the same project, I'm going to tell them a completely different set of facts.
Right.
But it is a challenge. If you're trying to do something that's all buttoned up and serious and it seems like on a level that it's going to be sort of emotionally serious, that's what most funding sources are. They're giving you money, they want to do that.
Right.
Saying I want to do something funny or I want to do this seriously, but it's going to mostly be, funny because I want to engage people. There are very few sources that are kind of willing to take the chance on that.
Right.
Yeah.
So all you can do is sort of show them previous films. Like Winnebago Man is ultimately a very serious film, but it's also very funny.
Right.
So you can show them, see what I did, see what I did.
So how did you guys build a 50-year career on, making comedic?
Well, there were ups and downs.
Some famous actor died in the 19th century. Apparently his last words were, "Dying is easy.
Comedy is hard."
And it's true. And
Well,
if you ever watch a film trying to be funny, and it's not,
It's so hard.
It's like cringe.
I think we found our episode title, gentlemen. Dying is easy, comedy is hard.
You think, you're talking about like comedians. By and large, comedians are depressed.
Yeah.
They're depressed people, right?
You guys don't seem depressed to me.
Well,
Like, you both
well,
have
we're
like
not
a
comedians
smile
per
on your
se. We're not comedians per se. Well, we're putting the whole thing on now. I realize that. Actually, I have to go home and I've been drinking since 6 o'clock in the morning.
Well, Keith, my co-host, often talks about the tangibles and the intangibles of what we do.
Right.
And the tangibles can sometimes be depressing, but the intangibles are the thing that I think keeps us coming back and wanting to do this work over and over.
Right.
So can you talk about what some of those intangibles are for you guys?
Personally, I love going behind the scenes.
Yeah.
We just finished a big project that we got to hang out with a bunch of kind of international class artists.
Oh,
and it was great, like spending 2 days with like the world's greatest fashion designers, a woman named Iris van Herpen in Amsterdam. It's like, yes, come to my studio, we'll have 2 days together. And just hanging out in that atmosphere.
Yeah.
And even though very little of it made it into the final film, it's really like a career high point in terms of enjoying things. So there's a little bit of this sort of selfishness there, but you also think that it informs how you address the next shoot and the next person. And we learned a lot about sort of artistic creativity, because that's what the theme of the series was about. And then you think about it in your own work. That's one of the intangibles that we do. And the other thing is telling stories. It's harder these days because everybody's got a camera and everybody's got a YouTube channel.
Yeah, look at what, I mean, case in point, right?
Correct,
here, right?
exactly. But the idea that you were telling stories that otherwise wouldn't be told. So PBS wanted a series for Mother's Day back in the 90s. And we pitched a show where all we would do was interview mothers of all different walks of life. Several of her from Austin.
Okay.
And just ask them about being a mother.
Yeah.
And some of the mothers were like scary, you know, and some of the mothers were, we wish they were your mother. But it was kind of an example of these women had been waiting all their life to be asked about being a mother. They were not, they were just regular, like we call civilians, or normies. And you got amazing stories that never would have gotten out.
Right. So you gave them, you're doing, describing something that
permission.
I love so much, which is like you're giving somebody a stage on which to like perform themselves.
That is
Show
correct.
their
That's
best
correct.
self to the
Exactly.
Correct. And all these women had never been on camera before.
Yeah,
that was
part
part
of
of
our
our
thing. We wanted-
part of our thing. It's sort of like, so
We
the
didn't want
stories
professional people.
the stories were fresh. If you're talking to a mother about having a child, for goodness sakes, what could be the most important, perhaps the most important thing in their life? You know, well, some people would say like, you know, I can't believe how painful it was. I felt like I was being cracked in half. You know, it's like stuff like that. But then there were some of the mothers who were very sweet.
Right.
And some of them were like, oh my God, you do not want this person as your mother.
I remember we interviewed a woman, and she was like a secretary. She was not prepossessing physically, and she was just hilarious. She was like a total natural documentary subject. But her husband and children were watching from like in back of the camera.
Yeah.
And I looked at them, and they were like, who is this woman? I mean, obviously she's been in her life for like 50 years. They had never seen, she was waiting for that moment. And I said to her, I said, you are so great. You should do more of this. She said, no, I'm done.
Well, we had another.
Let's pause right here. Sorry, guys.
What the hell is this anyway? It looks like canoes.
Yeah, they look like canoes.
Wherever.
Together.
Okay.
What do you think the name of that sculpture is?
Oh, is this like a test here? Does everybody in Texas knows what this is?
Sailing into the future.
Ooh, I was gonna say row.
Row year, row. Okay,
The
listen,
person who didn't have a sense of humor beyond the idea of
well,
a
it always
bunch of steel canoes.
these just amaze me. The thing amazes me about this stuff is like somebody wired this. Having not somebody, but clearly like in a body of people wired this.
Yes.
Because there's how did this happen?
Somebody probably studied very hard at one of the top art schools in the country to help this artist in their studio. wire up a bunch of-
Right. And think of the studio. Or was it like an airplane hangar somewhere?
Well, it's funny
Really
because
kind of
we just completed this series called Confluence, which was all about art and technology and the marriage therein.
saw that.
And this is exactly the kind of stuff where the artist would just do a sketch, but it was up to an engineer and a whole tech team to make it work and make sure that it didn't fall on people and all that.
Well, now we have to go find out what the actual.
Okay, all right, let's go find it. No, okay, we'll go. I'll go give you
all our
the
guests here to guess what it's called, and then they're blown away by the
actual title. All right, it is called Monochrome for Austin. That's it?
All right.
No, that's really a marvel of engineering.
See, there it is. The engineers
Okay,
never
70 aluminum canoes, 70. And they are carefully cantilevered, bound on steel cables. It's a whimsical sculpture.
So it's a marvel of engineering, but not a marvel of titling.
No.
So what this reminded me when we were saying about how you bring everybody here to do this test, which you might want to incorporate this in future shoots. But that was actually one of our early toolkit pieces, which is to do person on the street interviews.
Yeah.
Oh,
Vox Pop.
Which we actually are on record as loathing, except that every 15th interview you get a piece of gold.
That's the problem, though, is because the ratio of junk to actually something that's really good is like, so you got to stand there for a lot. You got to talk to a lot of people before you get this stuff. I will say, however, that our collaborator, Paul Steckler, loves doing Vox Pop. And I will say that because both of us will kind of go, oh shit, I don't do that anymore. And Paul will be like, oh, come on, we can do some more. And I can take a look at him and he's going like, we can do more. Come on, guys, we can do more.
Well, it's also.
But eventually we do. Yeah. Eventually we do. We kind of get dragged out onto the street again and we start doing it again. But okay.
It's also, to me, it's one of these essential understandings of making documentary films is that you actually don't know when to stop properly because you don't know what you're going to get. Right. We've been in many places where it's like 3 a.m. I think we can stop shooting, guys. But you always second guess that.
Yeah.
Especially as we get older. When we were younger, it's like, sure, we'll just hang out till 4 a.m. if we have to.
Sure.
And then now it's kind of like, you know what, I really want to go to sleep.
No. But in fact, it's absolutely true. And we've had literally some of the best things we've ever shot because we said, one of us anyway said, well, why don't we just hang out another 5 more minutes?
Yeah.
And it just so happens that suddenly that guy, he was incredible and blah, 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 blah.
People say, why can't you, why did it take you so long to film this, make this movie? And I said, yeah, well, if we knew ahead of time, which 90% we couldn't use, we reserved that.
Yeah, right. It doesn't work like that.
I mean this as a high compliment, but it strikes me that talking about the voice of the people, which is Vox Pop, making comedic documentaries that are not about famous people, that are regionally specific, those things are probably the hardest things to find financing for right now. When we live in this age of the 3 C's, right? It's celebrity, crime, and cults.
Yeah.
Boy, that's good. I like that.
That's what gets funded in terms of nonfiction work these days.
I will say, I agree, but I will say that documentaries have gotten much looser about funny stuff. So you will see true crime documentaries where there's somebody really eccentric where you laugh out loud.
I'm pitching one of those right now.
There you go.
But we're having
you're having a hard time. Well, look, I think you're having a hard time pitching almost anything now that isn't crime. It isn't crime and celebrity.
So how are you guys contending with that? As a team that has worked together for 50 years and has this amazing body of work, how is it that you guys are still getting work made, and what is sort of the thing that's driving you still, as the landscape is shifting so radically?
Intellectually, nothing beats making documentary films. I mean, you're using every synapse in your brain to make something work, technical stuff, the creative, the emotional stuff. So we just do it. I don't want to say we do it for free because we're sort of doing a lot for free now. It's $1 an hour when you average out our pay. But the models are just, some of it's luck. Yeah. We did this big series. A rich guy wrote a check for the whole series because he was passionate about it, and we were in the right place at the right time.
And which one was that one?
That was Confluence.
When you were finished last year.
Yeah, and the guy who put money into it was a very passionate idea of his.
Yeah, and tell me about Confluence.
Well, Confluence is a 3-hour series. It was on PBS last year. It still sits around somewhere up on PBS Passport. And it's all about the convergence of art, science, and technology. And started just before COVID, actually. We had our first R&D grant, and then about a week or two after we could have had our first meeting together with our team, everything shut down. So all of a sudden, everybody's on Zoom.
Yes.
And the curious thing about that is that nobody was doing anything, including the people who you might want to have in your movie. So you could actually get in touch with them, on Zoom.
We had an architect who designs 110-story buildings in China and all around the world. Very successful. And he says, I'm just in my backyard assembling furniture. I normally go to China twice a month. So what do you want?
And so that helped a lot in terms of just simply us being able to understand, getting to people understand what we were actually trying to do. The things about making documentaries is you can write all about the kind of stuff that you think you want to put in your documentary so that you can try to convince people to give you money to make them. And then on the other hand, it's like, well, what are you actually going to put in your documentary?
What's really going to happen?
What's really going to happen? And of course, the whole idea is that you don't really know. If you did know, well then, well, it'd be kind of like a typing exercise, right? I mean, it'd be like if you already knew everything was going to happen. The whole point is for us anyway, is to use the material we have and organically almost tell us what the movie is supposed to be about.
This is really pretty. I've never been here.
Yeah, isn't this nice?
Yeah.
So we're right across from the film building. It's the brutalist building behind us here, but this courtyard has this beautiful tree and this great view of the tower.
Great.
And look, we've got it all to ourselves. This is really wild.
Yeah, nobody here.
There is nobody here. I know that you guys have an appointment at the Ransom Center. We've got about 15 more minutes or so here. Okay. So you're making this new short film,
right?
Yeah.
About an architect.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a follow-up to when you asked about funding.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So this is one of those things. We're actually telling this publicly for the first time, so I have no idea how it's going to be received.
Okay.
But we got a little bit of money from the NEA, National Endowment for the Arts, which everyone thinks is dormant under the Trump administration. Well, it turns out they're not. They simply, as I say, realigned with the administration priorities. There's this thing that's supposed to happen. They're building the so-called Garden of Heroes for the 250th anniversary, where they want to have statues of like 150 Americans who they consider to be sort of like a Hall of Fame kind of thing. They had an RFP, request for proposals.
Yep.
And they said, do an art project on one of these subjects. And it could be like a dance performance, it could be any number. It wasn't necessarily for film. But somebody sent us the link and we went, okay. And what we did, which is we love to do, we love to reverse engineer RFPs. Because if somebody says, Ben, I'm going to give you $25,000, do whatever you want. It's a little panicky. If somebody says, Ben, $25,000, it's got to be a true crime story with a funny thread in it. You go, okay, I can probably build a proposal.
Right, like you need some guardrails or some direction.
And one of the things we learned from this series about artists is that all artists kind of need that. Otherwise, they lock up.
Interesting.
They need to have, like the guy who builds a 100-story building says, I need to have like zoning regs and know what the building space is, and then I can do what I need to do.
Artists can really paralyzed, and I think you could find, even filmmakers can be paralyzed. Somebody said, make a movie about anything you want. Anything, okay? Anything you want.
Too wide open.
You know,
so we looked at the list, and one of the names that we passed up, Sojourner Truth, Barbara Jordan, William F. Buckley, these are all people who there's a lot of perfectly good stuff.
Oh, here, go. Maybe we let this guy go.
Okay.
Go ahead. So this is good filmmaking right here. We got to let that.
All right.
There you
Very
go.
loud.
This is what happened. This is what happened.
Is this a new sponsor?
I think this is just B-roll. It's just B-roll. Yeah.
No, we'll tag them. We'll tag them on social media and say.
The thing that I'm coming to learn about this new technology, this new modern age we're living in, is that it's all A-roll.
All A-roll.
That's
probably true.
Yeah,
that's probably true.
You now.
Well, actually, so there is no editing then. We don't actually need editing anymore, right?
It's debatable.
It's all live. It's all live. It's all real. It's so real.
Everybody wants authenticity right now.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. And considering that AI is like completely inauthentic,
right?
That's what people can make movies. Because my godson's in Los Angeles, and he's starting a company whereby he's making movies where there is no movie. There is nothing. Okay, there are no people. There's no scenes. Everything is generated by AI.
Wow.
And he sent me like a little 2-minute thing. He likes to make horror movies, so it's kind of like that kind of a genre.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I was hard pressed to tell the difference.
Wow.
And it's just So I mean,
wait, it's photorealistic.
It's both. Yes, it is. It is photorealistic. It's kind of a Sora 2 sort of thing.
Yeah.
Right. But at the same time, he's doing a lot of weird angles and that kind of thing, a lot of tilts and stuff. Right. But having said that, the verisimilitude is kind of like freaky.
Yeah.
Freaky.
Well, so how are you guys thinking about that? Like, as lifelong documentarians, we're watching attendance at movies fall, funding for the arts go out the window.
Stop! Don't say that anymore. Stop.
We're watching, a new generation of young people coming up who don't turn the TV on, who watch things on their phones.
Well, I mean, The deal now is that people, it has been foretold for some time now that 90-minute doc, the long form doc, is kind of, well, it's a dead format. Well, it's not dead, of course.
Right.
Like no format really dies that way, but it certainly has been eclipsed, by shorter pieces, because the stereotype is that our attention spans have gotten much shorter and blah, 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 which of course is true. But at the same time, for all we know, maybe there'll be a counter reaction and then people will start wanting to have something that's actually deeper and longer. I don't know. The problem, I suppose, is where's it going to go? We have all sorts of distribution channels. You've got streaming channels and all that stuff. But for the most part, most of the work that they want is pretty well defined. It's just the way you described it earlier.
Yeah.
Crime and celebrity and that kind
Cults.
And so it's sort of algorithmically based in terms of their audiences, and each one of these streamers has their own way of looking at what it is that they think their audience wants, and that's what they want to give them.
I would say that, look, we are.
This is a turtle crossing, by the way. Can we point that out?
Yes, here, I got it. Look at this.
I don't often see that on campuses, but I suppose.
Oh, you know why? Look, we see him right there.
Where is he?
There's our guy.
Yeah, they're there in the
Let's
pool.
go.
In the,
Let's
in the
go check him
pond.
out.
Oh, there they are, yeah.
Actually, I love that we're doing this because when I was teaching, while I was fresh out of grad school, one of my pre-teaching rituals was to listen to music and go on a quick walk, and I would always come here.
And here they are.
And see the turtle pond, and I haven't been here in a long time.
Well, over there, yeah.
Yeah, they are. They're the guys over there. There's like 3 of them over there sunning themselves, not worrying about, melanomas or anything of that sort.
Or AI, or how the young are consuming their media. Looks pretty good to be a turtle right now.
Yeah, really. Well, you move slow, but you get things done on your own pace,
Well, so actually, as I was about to say this, is that we are late career filmmakers at this point. We're not mid anymore, and at a certain point, you just say, "Well, the hell with it. I just want to do what I want to do." Like we're doing this 10-minute movie about an architect. It's like stakes are low, other than our own professional
integrity
and interest in making something interesting.
Right.
I was going to do it.
That's what we're going to do.
And I believe that ultimately satisfies.
And it leads to the best work often.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Well, it's sort of going back to your roots in a sense, right?
Yeah.
Because when you first started making movies, you're following your nose. And my wife always said, like, your first documentary is your best. Which I can debate somewhat, but having watched some of our early stuff, I know what she's talking about.
Right.
Because what she's saying is that you were learning by doing, and effectively. And back in New Orleans, where we started off, there really wasn't anybody to kind of tell us you should point your camera here or you should make this edit here. In fact, we would often come to New York with our rough cuts to kind of talk to other filmmakers and sort of to get some real, genuine feedback.
Or my favorite, you should run sound under your cutaways instead of just cutting the sound out. This is the first film. It's a quite sophisticated film, but every time there's like a cutaway, the sound just drops out.
It's like, why did we do that?
The next one is like, I think we can run it underneath.
You guys are touching on a great point here, which is that we hope that this podcast is for aspiring filmmakers or people just, starting out.
Excellent.
And so we'd like to do a lightning round at the end. And the first question is always, what would your advice be to a young filmmaker right now?
Well, it's almost the same advice that we probably would have given a long time ago, and that was find something in your own life, find something in your own environment, find something that you think you have access to that perhaps maybe somebody else doesn't. And then you will be able to document that. You'll be able to do something with that, which maybe nobody else could do.
Find and develop your own voice.
Right. I mean, the same thing you said to writers is like write what you know.
Part of it is go do it where nobody else is. I mean, we started in New Orleans, and 50 years ago, there wasn't anybody else doing documentaries about New Orleans. Well, now I would say run away from New Orleans because there's 38,000 feature films and people doing it. Are you from Tulsa? Are you from the Panhandle? Right. There are stories there.
Yeah,
there are human beings, and people don't know those stories. It's a good place to screw up also because it's like if a tree falls in the forest and nobody's around, if you screw up your film, nobody will really know, and you will learn a lot.
I always used to tell students that too when I taught, which is like, if you don't make a film that you look back on and are embarrassed of when you're a student, you're doing it wrong. You're supposed to push yourself, and you're supposed to be bad right now. So go try a bunch of things and fail.
And it's perfectly fine.
The other piece of advice, which I'm sure every filmmaker says, is that you often need to have enormous changes at the last minute. some of our greatest successes have been rearranging scenes in a doc, like literally a week to go before you have to be locked. And suddenly it's like, you know what? This scene that never quite fit, you put that first. We had a movie, we couldn't come up with a good opening, and we had a piece of a scene that was later, much later in the film, said, okay, we're gonna cut that in half, put it up front, start that, and then say 8 months earlier, and go to the rest of the movie.
Well, and so funny.
A lot of fiction filmmakers have figured that out.
Oh, yeah.
But you have to kind of relearn the same tricks every movie.
Well, it's sort of like one of the other secret things is that very often the beginnings and the ends are interchangeable. Certainly for documentaries, which aren't necessarily telling a narrative story.
A linear
story, yeah. In fact, often beginnings and endings are often very similar.
Okay. So this isn't one of our traditional lightning round questions, but this subject came up recently on another episode.
Okay.
And Keith felt very adamant that co-directing only works if you're related. And I made the point, because I have co-directed a fair amount of times, that that's not true.
Not true.
And that you can co-direct very well.
Yeah.
And so I want you guys to make the case for co-directing.
Well, we can make the case for it and against it.
No, that's absolutely true.
Part of it is the two of us have been together for half a century. We sort of know. Also, division of labor, he shoots. I don't get really involved in the look of things. I do the audio. I often do the questions, but he pitches, and we kind of know each other. So we're sort of.
We should have him be shooting.
Special.
Here, you take the camera with us. Right?
Okay, now I got to shoot.
I'm pointing out, so you need to,
I
reverse.
switch it right now.
But it's kind of interesting because on the Confluence series, there were 4 directors. Okay, with very different life experiences. You know, one guy was under 40, one of the producers was over 80, you know, but everybody was equally involved. So, but there were like very different styles. There was, you know, one producer came out of advertising, so they had a very kind of experience of like, we come in, we shoot, we're done. You know, and I remember there was a shoot, and he was great. He was a great collaborator. Yeah. He was very good, but I remember one shoot where he said, okay, we're gonna go to the next shot. It was like, no, there's a moment here. Let's just shoot a little bit longer. And then these two guys started talking, and we got a little documentary.
Got a little more. On the other hand, I would say he was also a very good shooter. Okay, being a shooter myself, and he was, you know, he actually did some things that I would not necessarily have thought of. I always feel like whenever I work with another DP, I'm always learning something. Yeah. I really am. I'm picking up something from the way in which they do things, even though I've been shooting for like, you know, half a century.
But in terms of the kind of creative decision making, some of it was rocky and some of it wasn't. I think one of the things that's most important is for whoever you're working with, when you understand you've got something good. If one person says, why are we talking to this person? He's boring. And you think that, no, they're not boring. There's something there. Right. You have to be aligned. Okay. It's not like anybody's right or wrong, but you need to be aligned.
You know, and usually even, you know, with Lily and I working together for so long, we know each other's predilections. We know each other what we're going to like and what we're not going to like. And for the most part, that's aligned. For the most part, we all know, even working with Paul as well. As much as we might feel like, well, he might say, I really love that, and classically we would do an interview, and Paul would say, oh, that's such a great interview, and both Louis and I would look at each other and go, nah, I don't think so. But then we look at our material, and very often he's right, and we just sort of kind of come away with it, a kind of, you know, we're a little bit more jaundiced when it comes to like doing things that perhaps than he is, right? But that's the kind of thing that goes on when you're working together with somebody for a long time.
It is tough to collaborate, and if you start getting bogged down in like minutia of like fighting with each other, it just becomes toxic. I have to say, part of having a co-director and a co-producer, it is so useful not only for division of labor, but to just have somebody give you a reality check. Do you think this is a good idea, or what about that? And you know, maybe he's got a better idea than me. Doesn't happen much, but everyone's.
The great thing about collaborating is that you get someone to collaborate with. You know, the bad thing about collaborating is that you have to collaborate with somebody.
Okay, last question, because I know we're walking up to the Ransom Center here.
Right.
What is the thing that you guys cannot stop thinking about right now?
Oh, the chai. My next dirty chai.
Your next cup of coffee. I like that.
You know, what I like actually, and this shoot's been really fun, is this technology. This is totally new to me. And the idea that this is stuff we used to dream about, you know, when we first started off. and to see it actually be there and so easy to use, and,
Oh, it's fantastic.
and to give you your A roll, and the
I
idea is that
agree.
keep from
Yeah,
happening.
I agree.
I'm not super tech forward, but I'm tech forward enough to really love.
Right.
You can do that. That's great.
Right, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
That's awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for doing
All right.
this. It's been
Hey,
a
man.
true pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. Great to
Keep
see
up the
you.
good work. Thank you guys for the work that you've done. I really, really love it. So, Keith, that was my interview with Louie and Andy.
Louie and Andy, Louie Alvarez, Andy Kolker. Those guys have a wealth of experience and like kind of like their own little corner of the industry.
50 years. That is so incredible that they have been at it that long. And I love that they have such a great sense of humor and that they're still such good friends. What'd you find?
So I found like a magnet.
Look at that. For those of you who don't know, Keith is kind of a scavenger. He picks up little pieces of metal or like interesting objects that
Oh,
we
here's
find
another
on the
one.
ground.
We call them metal trinkets, and we make little robots out of them. There's
You
that
and
is.
Sarah and Theo
Yeah,
are a crafty bunch. I love it.
we like to craft it up. So, Louie and Andy, thank you guys for coming on Dock Walks, and thank y'all for tuning in, and thank you, Ben, for handling that one without me.
Well, thank you, Keith. And those were I don't know, just for being Keith. So Louie and Andy came from New York to Austin, where we did the episode. And next week, I'm going from Austin to New York. And I have the immense pleasure of getting to go and film an episode with Alan Berliner at his home studio. And I cannot wait.
This is another episode that you have the immense pleasure, and I have the immense jealousy. This is a Dock Walks studio visit.
Alan Berliner is one of my all-time favorite filmmakers. He has an archivist's brain on a level that is hard to explain, yet you have to be in the studio to really understand. And I can't wait to go and share it with all of you. So next week we have my studio visit with Alan Berliner, and I can't wait for you to see that one, Keith, and for you guys to see that at home.
That'll be great. Thank y'all. Happy New Year. Enjoy whatever it is you're about to go do. I don't know. That's it. I should stop talking.
Yeah, I think that's it. We'll see you guys next week
Catch you next time.
on Dock Walks.
Dock Walks is presented, directed, created, edited by myself and this guy.
Hello.
We couldn't do it without co-producer Dayton Thompson.
No, we
who
couldn't. Thank you, Dayton.
continues to knock it out of the park. Thank you, Dayton. And thanks to the folks at the Bear.
The folks at Go Valley, we have a team of interns that are working hard for us.
And thank you for sticking around. If you're still here, you're a diehard and we appreciate you. We'll catch you next time.
On Dock Walks. Follow us at Dock Walks Pod on Instagram, X, and YouTube.